Welcome everybody. So happy that you're all here and that you've all made this trek to the amazing city of Creston to honor my father. And I think we're going to have a wonderful time doing that today.
We're going to start with Open Thy Gates of Beauty, which was an arrangement of a Lutheran hymn that Phil did early on in his career. I think Kurt Hansen had a big influence on Phil's publishing of this. The text is just lovely, opening the gates in nature, and Phil touched all of our lives in so many wonderful ways. So we're sure that those gates have opened, and that is where his spirit now resides. So we'd like you to enjoy Open Thy Gates of Beauty.
Sing to the Lord a new song, praise in the assembly of the faithful. Let the sons of Zion rejoice in their King. Let them praise his name with dancing, making melody with timbrel and lyre. For the Lord takes pleasure in his people. He adorns the humble with victory. My name is Janna Tull-Steed. I'm not sure exactly why I've been asked to do this, but at least in part probably because I am ordained in the Church of Jesus Christ. But more than that, I have been a part of this scene for more than 20 years. And I am honored and grateful to be here. We don't gather as a community of the same faith, but of many different faiths and philosophies and approaches and viewpoints and so forth. And that's in keeping with Phil, who was someone who was constantly questioning and looking and seeking truth and meaning in the life that he lived so fully. So I welcome you once again on behalf of his family, and also on behalf of all the people whose lives he touched. I also want to remember and to call to your memory some people who went on before Phil, among them his daughter Sarah, and his friend and a very loyal supporter of the program here, Ruth York. It was a summer Sunday in New Haven, Connecticut in 1995. And I went to church, Episcopal church, and I walked across the street. I ran into a friend, colleague, who, as it turned out, reminded me that he was from Iowa and that his mother lived in Des Moines. I was actually trying to decide whether I was going to move to Creston, Iowa, and enroll in the music program at Southwestern Community College. My friends thought I was crazy. I wondered if I was myself. Well, I decided I should have some breakfast. So I went to Linder's Bagels. I mean, there really is there is a Linder's Bagels in New Haven where they make the bagels and also they serve breakfast. And I went there and I was sitting in the main part of the restaurant and I heard the strains of music. And I thought, I've never been played music before, and I listened again and it sounded very familiar. So I asked the waitress to move my plate to this little alcove. And it was Mel Torme singing "You Must Believe in Spring." Well, I had met Phil in the summer of 1992 at a workshop at Foothill College. His friend, Niall Norton, had been the music director at a church where I was associate pastor. And Niall thought I should go to the workshop because I had been taking vocal jazz lessons with him. So I did. And Phil was fascinated with the idea of a United Methodist minister who wanted to sing jazz, first of all. So that was the beginning, and eventually, I think he did send me a CD of "You Must Believe in Spring," so that had an association for me. And also, I had come for a visit and had presented some music of Duke Ellington with the group. So I was trying to decide, and that was one of the things that just kind of pushed me in this direction. Well, each one of us has a story about how we met Phil, or how we came to Creston, or why we decided to study music in some way or another. Or even the church folks here in town, or people in town who have come to the concerts. They remember moments of beauty and incredibly refined presentations of sacred music at their churches or at the Christmas program that was held every year. So we all have our memories. Well, Phil and I, we didn't really jihad as teacher and student, to use an Arkansas expression. But I did learn a lot from him nevertheless. And in time, we collaborated on some projects that were very satisfying to both of us, especially the recording of some Duke Ellington sacred music with his semi-professional vocal jazz group. As I was talking to Mark about different things I wanted to say, we all know Phil was a jazz pianist and accompanist of virtually incomparable skill and talent. And he was a wonderful arranger. And he loved to teach, and he loved to bring people together and introduce them to a different way of looking at music. But the thing that struck me the most when I first came here was what he could do with the choir. And that using the choral music from the Christian repertoire that the choir rehearsed in the fall before going on tour, and this polyglot of kids and people with no musical background and people with degrees in music and people from different ages and people from Canada and California and the town next door, taking all these people together, some who'd never sung because they were instrumentalists, and he could get a sound out of that ensemble that would take you right to the gates of heaven. So I give thanks to God for that experience. It was a very meaningful time for me as I got a big transition point in my life. Though Phil turned away from a very strict religious upbringing, and he sought his truth in various places and from various people, including Krishnamurti, whom he thought very highly of and whom he followed at least for some time. I don't know how long or whether he stayed with him, but that was very important to him when I knew him. But I was always seeking. He was looking for holiness, if you will, for wholeness as well, which are very similar things. He was always wanting to touch the beautiful things, the beautiful sound. And so he did it in part, maybe mostly, through his music. And he showed us all what that was like. We will have a lot of music today and a lot of speech and laughter. I told DeMarc I would bring a box of tissue and a big smile today. So we will have tears and we will have laughter. But right now, before the next part of the program, I'd like us just to have silence. The silence that kind of makes room for that music to come through.
In the beginning, God and Inez Mattson and John Mattson created Philip John Mattson. And he was birthed a Baptist in Brainerd, Minnesota. I came along 20 months later. I'm his brother David. So that lets you know who I am. The beginning of the music thing was when I said Baptist a few minutes ago. My mom and dad were devout Baptist people, and that meant music. I think we all know that Baptists are music people, and they follow it and they love it, and it drives the train mentally, emotionally, spiritually, at every level. So when we were little kids, church was Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, and all the other meetings in the middle. And the Baptist church, we had a good organist and a great piano player at our church. We were in a little town of Brainerd, Minnesota, a little town of 10,000 people, which wasn't that large, but it was a very powerful and it was a very strong church. And, typical, not to every Baptist church, was we'd sing hymns or songs for 20 minutes. On a 1-hour church service, it was 20 minutes worth of hymns and 5 minutes worth of announcements. And then special music was 5 minutes. And then the message or the sermon was 30 minutes, and then you're out of there. So that was the 1-hour service. So basically you got 25 minutes at least of music on a 1-hour service. If it went longer, it was just going to be more music, frankly. And Philly and I, and friends, but we just clung on to this music thing. I mean, we were fascinated by the piano, right from the get-go. It just was inspiring to us. It was we listened, we enjoyed, we talked about it. And so forth and so on for years. I think maybe I was 6, maybe Philly was 8, maybe 7, something like that, right around there. We started to push Mom and Dad about piano lessons. And we were pushing hard. I mean, we were driving the train. We want piano lessons, we want piano lessons, we want piano lessons. So we had the old board meeting at the kitchen table on a Saturday night. That's how we did things. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's where the board meetings were held. And Mom and Dad said, we understand that you want to take piano lessons. And we said, and they said, great, it's wonderful. So here's the deal. We'll get you the best piano teacher in town. We'll buy a piano. We didn't have a piano. We'll buy a piano. But here's the deal from your end. Once you start, you don't stop. Do you understand breathing? Once you start, you don't stop. It's like going to church on Sunday. It's like going to school on Monday to Friday. You will not stop until the time comes when you know that you have got this thing down. And you're confident and everybody else knows the confidence in what you're doing. So that's the deal. And we're not going, hey, yeah. Let's go. When do we go and get the piano? And Dad says, there's no yes or no tonight. You think about it for 1 week. Then we'll have the meeting here next Saturday night. And that's your decision night. And believe me, I'm telling you, if you say yes, you're married to that damn piano. And practice. So we did, and away it went. And I think I was the more frustrating student than my brother. I mean, my mind was all over the place. Philly could be a little bit more direct on to things, but so anyway, the piano comes, and the idea of this, and so this is probably 1947 or 1946. It was an Emerson upright piano, $75. I'll never forget it. And it was in our house. It was perfect. It was strong. I mean, you know, that sucker was like a 5'8" grand, you know, 6 foot, 60 inches high. It was a damn good piano, and we loved it, enjoyed it. Piano teacher, Alice J. Giesler. Oh my. Oh my. 2 little boys and Alice J. Giesler. This was, the heart started to pump. I'm going to try to be not too indelicate here, but we were little boys growing up. She was red hair, German, that blue dress she seemed to wear every Thursday afternoon. She was well endowed and showing it just wonderfully. That dress, but it wasn't the secret to the whole thing. It really wasn't the secret. The secret was making a mistake. So we're at the piano. I'm not in the same lesson with my brother. I was at 4 o'clock, he was at 4. No, he was at 4, I was at 4:30. So we both went at the same time. So as we're practicing and playing and showing up what we're doing, when it came time for correction, this Giesler seemed to come over the back of our neck to correct our hands. And of course, she's coming down like so. And something very wonderful was happening to my mind, which I had to check with my brother with to see if it was going on in his mind or not. And his lesson. And we both agreed. And we both then made a decision that we were going to ensure the fact that every piano lesson we were going to make some mistakes. That was a planned deal. Make some mistakes. Because that word was So we didn't know what the hell was going on, but it was good. That's the only thing we know. It was good. Another good thing. In our church, with my mom and dad, and in music in the house, it was a big deal. And Philly and I jumped on creating songs. We'd listen to songs, and then we'd go to the piano and try to play them. Play around them, play them, copy them, duplicate them. It was the stimulation, excuse me, to where's my mind going musically. Because my mind was, both of our minds were on more than simply that classical tune that we were practicing and learning to play, which we appreciated and loved because our piano lessons were classical lessons. But here was the beauty in it for Miss Giesler. She recognized that immediately in us. And so our 1.5 hour piano lesson was 20 minutes, scales, arpeggios, all of the things rudimentary, and classical music, whatever the songs were that she had determined we were at. Then 10 minutes was given to us for us to display to her what we were musically thinking. What were we creating in our mind that week? And so it was wide open. 20 minutes for that, 10 minutes for that. And that 10 minutes was an education not only to ourselves, but to Miss Giesler as well. She just loved it. And again, that stimulation came from church music. I mean, that's where we got it all. I mean, that was the core to the whole thing. So I'm in 9th grade, Philly's in high school, and he started to get gigs around town because he could play with the best guys in the musicians union at the VFW, the Moose Lodge, the Elks. Wherever there was a dance, my brother could play the piano better than anybody else in high school. I mean, all the Old Park piano players were not even close to him when he was in the 11th grade. So he got all the jobs. So one night he says to me, Davey, I booked 2 jobs for this Friday night and I can't get out of them. I just really can't do it. And he says, I want you to play one of them. And I'm saying, really? I'm in 9th grade. And this is at the VFW. That's going to be so smoke-filled and pretty whiskey well-tested in every way. And he says, no, this is not going to be hard. You can do this. So I'm going to teach you 3 songs that are the core songs for the band. And once you got that down, you'll know and you'll be able to come up with anything and everything else they want to do. Just don't worry about it. So the 3 songs were Honeysuckle Rose in the key of F, 5'2" in E flat, and Darton Strutter's Ball in the key of C. So he shows me the chords, blah, 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 blah. He says, Art Schwenneman's going to be playing the clarinet. He's going to do this, blah, 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 blah. But, so it was fun, but it was an experience into life at that particular time that my brother walked me into. Our high school choir director was Kurt Hansen. Kurt Hansen was a graduate of St. Olaf College. He studied under F. Melius Christiansen, who was the master. In high school, 4 years that I was there, Ole came one year, then Paul would come the next year. They came for a week and literally did a 1-week program with our senior concert choir. They didn't get involved with the other choirs in the school, just our senior concert choir. So you could perhaps imagine how blessed we were at such a young age to be in the world of that talent. I mean, these were the best of the best. These were the masters. And we're in high school getting this kind of an education, which is just totally unbelievable. I don't know what else to say.
You've said it all.
My brother is Billy. Thank you.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever,
Hi, everyone. My name is Paige Peters. When I went to school here, my name was Paige Moore. I really wanted to get up here and speak because of honoring Phil and what he means to me in my life. And now that I'm up here, I'm overwhelmed with my feelings and my words, and everything seems to be a bit scattered, so sorry. I'll just say a quick story on how I got here, and I'll keep it short. I went to Foothill College to do a workshop. I thought it would be fun, and it was, so I went the next year. And I was charmed. I went the next year because I was compelled because of the first year. And I met a woman named Ann Oliver. She was a friend of Phil's. And we exchanged numbers. And we kept in touch. One year she called me and she was excited. And she said, Phil's opening up a school. And it's a great opportunity for somebody who would want to go out there and learn music. And you might be interested. So I was excited and I was interested. So I called Phil, and he said, well, great. Why don't you come to the workshop? And there was another workshop that was the following summer, and let's talk. So we did. I did, and the conversation went something like, during the conversation, he found out that I had no experience except for being in a high school choir, and that I was a college dropout. And, but I had a decent ear, but basically I was a huge wild card. And Phil said, Iowa is a long ways from California, Paige. The winters are cold, and no one there is going to be your age. The curriculum is going to be really hard, and it would be a real big challenge for you because you don't read. And you'll have to put a lot of effort and time in this program. And he looked at me and he said, do you still really want to come to Iowa? And I took a breath and I was really calm and I just said yes. And he looked at me and he said, okay. And that's what I remember with Phil. He just said okay and he meant it. And remember how his eye used to go like, I wasn't sure whether he was really looking at me. Phil took me seriously and he gave me a huge opportunity. Being in Iowa and studying with Phil for 3 years transformed my life for the better. And I got to discover who I was, or begin discovering who I was through music, through hard work, and in a beautiful setting, simple, beautiful, quiet setting. My experience here is ineffable, and I want to end with Phil, to me, to the very end, Phil was about music, and that's really all he ever wanted to do. That and ride his Harley. And he had to do it. You couldn't say no to Phil when he asked you to do something musically. I have the last voicemail he left me. We were singing weekly with Michele. And let's see if I can find it here.
Shaking tonight and at the end of still of course. I'm going to see if you'd like to sing. Excuse me. On Sunday evening, 6:15. I'd love to have you. Would you please get that guy as soon as possible so I can spread the class? If yes or no, okay? All right, Paige. Love you, right.
So that's Phil, that's my experience with Phil, and I'm very grateful for being here. I'm grateful for all the faces that I've seen and have known through the years. And this won't be the last. We'll continue to see each other and know each other and be grateful for the wonderful experience that Phil has given us. Thanks so much.
While Zanuck is setting up, I'll say a couple of words. I specifically did not plan something profound to say because I wanted to experience what I was hearing and feeling from people that were here for the events, the family and all the friends of Phil. You know, it's funny, what was it, 6 weeks ago, something like that, that I last talked to Phil. He called me on, I believe it was a Tuesday. There was nothing special about that day, nothing special going on. I believe it might have been the day before he passed, and he was lighthearted, really had a light spirit about him. And we were just chatting about stuff, and you know, sometimes we have business, like what songs are we going to do at the concert coming up or whatever, but today, on that day, he was just chatting. He did say something notable to me, and that was, I'm going to do something different in 2019. And I said, oh, cool, Phil, what's that? You know, and then he said, I'm going to be more loving and nicer to my family and friends. You know, part of me wonders about that and wonders what people know and, you know, how that connects with their time of passing and so on. But, you know, roll back 43 years, and there I was, a 17-year-old young person, not knowing what they're going to do in life and having kind of low self-esteem, but being kind of talented musically, but not knowing what they wanted to do, and running into this charismatic leader, Phil Mattson, and having it be life-transforming, exactly like Paige just talked about. And as I've spoken with people here this last day, since we've been in Creston, lots of folks have said the same thing. They have had a transforming, life-transforming experience in working with Phil Mattson. And so I just want to underline that and say how important it was for me. I don't know what life would be like if I had not happened to meet him at that time. I also want to say it wasn't all sugar and spice all the time, you know. Gosh, especially lately, you know, the last few weeks, I mean, we were like a couple of old grouchy family members with each other, you know. I mean, it wasn't perfection, and it was someone with that level of, you know, he was a non-conventional guy, and he was willing to say, you know, oh, yeah, I'm going to ride, I'll see you tomorrow, I'm going to ride 1,000 miles today so I can work toward my, world's record of Harley-Davidson miles ridden in a year, or a month, 30,000 miles in a month. And, he would be on that level of, wow, people don't really do that very often. But he did, but then on the other side of the coin, there's the, just to balance it, I mean, there's the, if you're close friends and family with him, maybe it was tough in some ways because he wasn't going to be the traditional, I will have children and be married and have a wonderful job and, live life in that conventional way. That wasn't his way. So there's a little bit of ups and downs about it, but I gotta say, everybody here has, in one way or another, was transformed, by the existence of Phil Mattson, and I love him, and we're going to do a song, and thank you, Zanuck, for being here to do this with me. This song reminds me of Phil a little bit, I don't know why, something about it. This one? Sure.
Goodbye, and comes you sleeping with our chins. This is where the concert is. Never lovers, never friends. Goodbye, hearts, call it a day. But before you ride away, I sincerely want to say I wish you music in the spring to give your heart more songs to sing, and in a kiss, but more than this, I wish you love. And in July, the road is wide to hold you on your Harley ride. Life without care, wind in your hair. I wish you love. My happy heart, and I agree. The line of fifths was meant to see. So I will play the chords you sing in every key. I wish you workshops in every June, a cozy choir to sing a tune, and most of all, when your French fries call, I wish you lunch. I've been hard lately. That leather seat is where you'll be. Oh, a Tanqueray on the bay will set you free. I wish you stardust. How high the moon, body and soul, or a Gershwin tune. It won't be long, you'll bust into song in heavens above. And most of all, when snowflakes fall, I wish you love. I wish you love. Oh, I wish you love.
Wow, how do you follow that?
Hi, I'm Josh, one of the progeny of Phil. There's all of us here today, except for my sister Sarah, who died 15 years ago yesterday. Yeah, I have a lot of notes too. Particularly neat. But the thing about my dad, as many of you know, is he was a cat with 9 lives. So I grew up, one of my first memories with my dad is sleeping on the motorcycle in front of him on a pillow on the gas tank, like this, on a Harley, and that was in a cabin, and just this feeling of like being with my dad on the Harley, sleeping on a pillow, it's just a perfect thing. But as Michele said, my father did not really find his purpose in his family. I mean, he was a man that really sought purpose in life. You know what I mean? He was always looking for meaning, as you talked about Creston and Marty. He was super philosophical, of course. I think he even had a philosophy as part of his major. You know, he was always looking for meaning, and he was always driven and trying to find some goal, some great challenge that he could achieve. But like I said, his family was not that. But you know what? We still benefited from being around him in that he was an inspiration. You know what I mean? And this was a guy who wasn't caught up in the bullshit of everyday life. You know what I mean? He was just like, he's not going to go to the store and get the milk. He's not going to go do this. But he is going to try to write an arrangement that's just going to kill it. And he is going to try to ride, you know, a motorcycle more than anybody else in the whole world. And then I remember when he was here in Creston, he saw this infomercial about real estate, and he decided he was going to be a millionaire. You know what I mean? Through Creston real estate, you know? Limited success there. But he, you know, he went for it. And, you know, to have that as a person in your life, like let's say my dad was a mechanic, and he went to work every day, and he came home and he loved us. You know, great, whatever. I mean, that's awesome. You have this loving figure in your life. But let's say your dad was just trying to do some crazy shit, you know what I mean? And going for it, you know what I mean? I really value that inspiration, because, you know, if you have someone that's a father or someone you know, I mean, I know so many of you that he was your family, right? I mean, he was part of your family. And so to have that person in your sphere of influence striving so hard to do those things, I think inspired so many people to greatness. Because if we get caught up in all the stuff we have to do every day in life, like me, I have a kid, I have a wife, it's like to make that extra time, to go the extra mile, is really, really, really hard. But to have someone in your life doing that is super important. And I think he served that purpose for so many of us, you know what I mean? Pushed all the bullshit aside and said, let's find out what we're really trying to get at here, you know what I mean? He invented it, like I said, he reinvented himself so many times. Like I was there, of course, at Foothill, which is of course the beginning, and I remember that was like the glory years. There's a couple of Foothill people still here, and that was like this just amazing Foothill time of glory, and the jazz camp started, and I was, would go to that, and I would go to like play bass, and I was a fledgling bass player, and my dad had very exacting standards for bass players, and I would be just like, and he would look over me and give me the look, and I would just melt, and immediately a bass player would just be like, just go to heck. So Foothill was the glory years, in my opinion, you know what I mean? And then we went to Spokane, and Gonzaga was great. And then he got in the accident, of course, and got all this money. What does he do with it? He's like, hey, let's start a school. Like what I've always wanted, let's take all this money and plow it into a school. Even though I don't understand how it could have been nearly enough money. It was like, how much was it? Like $100,000 or something? How can you start a school with $100,000? I don't even understand. You can't even get a couple of cars for $100,000. We started a school. And then there was PMS, you know what I mean? Which I did not even understand what that meant until years later. There was the PMS singers, there was the PMS school, But the PMS school was the glory years again. The PMS school was amazing. It was, there's a bunch of PMSers here. Super glorious. It was an amazing time. And then I left before the PMS ended. I had to go on my own mission quest and leave. And then he left PMS, and then he went to, he was at Pacific Lutheran for a while, right? And I was there for a year, and that wasn't really the glory years, but it was really good. And then he went on the cruise ship, and he got me a gig on the cruise ship, and that was a lot of fun. But then eventually, of course, I remember when he ended up here in Swick, I was like, what the hell? He's ended up in Iowa? You know what I mean? But this turned out to be the glory years again, too, for, 17, 18 years of solidness, and just making it happen.
26 years.
What?
No. Swick. Oh, I thought you were talking about Phil only.
Yeah, Phil only. Yeah.
I'll make that clear.
The story is still going. We got it.
Yeah, he had this indistinguishable drive. You know what I mean? He struggled at times with various things. The accidents, feeling depressed at times and stuff. But you know what? He would just get something and then grab it like a bone. It was like a dog on a bone. You could not get him off it, right? It was just like, he was unstoppable. He had this will and determination that, it's like I said, it's the inspiration that drove so many. But at the heart of it was his search for meaning, in life. Like in music, it was always serving the music. Rehearsals were a holy event. You know what I mean? It was like, I teach junior high, and let me tell you, to get that across to them, I get so mad at them. It's just amazing. Their disrespect for the music is utter and complete. And I was thinking, you saw, if my father was here, witnessing this, he would turn over in his grave. Anyway, but the gist of what I'm trying to say is that I think he served as a great inspiration to so many because of that drive, and the drive behind it was a drive towards meaning always in the end. You know what I mean? Now there's something that he wanted to get glory of his own. You could argue that maybe it was or everything, but his drive was really trying to find the highest meaning in everything. You know what I mean? The music was a vessel to do that. You know what I mean? To find, heaven on earth and here through music. And so, yeah, I guess that's all I'm rambling about. We're done now. All right.
How many had to do this for an audition? Now I'm scared.
My heart is sad believe it that you would wanna turn away romance. Sweet are you pretending it looks like the ending? Unless I could have one more chance to prove it.
Now my life's a wreck you're making. I know. Myself to you, body and soul. Don't you know he was the king of saxophones? Yes, indeed he was. Talking about the guy who made it sound so good. Some people knew him as the king, but Hawkins was his name. He sure could swing it, played pretty too. Sounds good to me, should sound good to you. I love to hear him playing body and soul. Very pleasing to the ear. When I first heard it on the record, I just stopped right there. Sounded like a band of angels in the sky, and I have never ever heard a sweeter tone. In fact, I paid no attention to the saxophone till Coleman Hawkins came along and spoke to everyone. Saying that it's just about the listen, won't you hear me play for you? Sometimes it's hot, then again it's blue. My soul just seems to wander, pleasing each and everyone. Is what I've long been craving for. The doors have not been always open, but I am trying to please you. Please don't try to stop me. Hope you like it, folks. And then he started cooking. Every time he played some melodic melody, fast or slow, you can tell that it was Hawkins. No other one ever has like captured his tone, just he alone. As a sound that penetrates, it will sure go right through you, yes it will. And every chorus gives you just another thrill. Then along came Eddie Jefferson, he sang the melody like Hawkins played it. He sang it true, he sang it blue, made words for me too. All his fans in New York loved him, there's no one above him. Here in the USA, I heard him say, oh, and he was the man. Oh, how he could sing, man, did he swing, sang on a wing, did his own thing, yes he did. Throughout the country music, lovers are still waiting on Eddie, singing all around the world. He is known. Rhythm was his special joy. He spoke it like a horn. He must have been born to be a singer, 'cause his lyrics were so sincere and true. Funny, sad and blue, oh yeah. And we got to remind you, many years it took him, singing every day to attain his first claim to fame. He was 20 years ahead of his time, and he knew it
as we hear them yet. Goodbye.
Hoping to get to talk to you. I have a couple of serious questions that I think you might be able to shed some light on for me. So, if you get this message, would you call me as soon as possible? And in the meantime, I hope you're having a good evening, my friend, and a good year so far. Okay? Phil, I love you. Bye-bye.
That was the last message I got from Phil, dated January 3rd, came in at night when I was asleep. And it's quite a gift, as I'm sure you can understand. I suspect maybe some other people out there got similar phone calls. I called him the next morning. I forgot to ask him what the questions were that I was going to shed some light on, but I think I've always known what the questions are. The meaning of life was a big one. The meaning of what comes next, I think, was on his mind all of his life. Whether that be what chord comes next in the progression, or what Wendy's we're going to eat at next on the road, or who's the next singer, or what happens after we transcend and leave this life to the next step. And I think regardless of what you believe about that, he knows something now that we don't, and I hope we catch up with him again someday. It was a remarkable journey. I first met Phil when I was 15 at Soundsation Jazz Camp in Seattle. Worked with him that year, worked with him the next year, had a chance to work with him at Gonzaga and the Phil Mattson School, and on the road during the summers playing bass for him, listening to him throw new harmonic changes in my ear to the point where I was terrified and tried desperately to keep up, and learned everything I needed to know about music, I think, in some respects. I imagine a lot of you understand what that feels like. His handprint is on everything I do, no matter how hard I try for it not to be, no matter what I try to write that doesn't follow a 1-6-2-5 progression in some weird way. Everything that he taught me lives on, and everything that I do is somehow a reflection of those lessons. I miss him. I miss him a lot. I will continue to miss him a lot, but I don't feel that he's gone as much as I feel that he's just always right here, embedded in what I know about music and life. And Phil, I thank you very much for that.
For those of you who don't know, I'm Luke Mattson. I'm one of the progeny of Phil Mattson. This arrangement that we're going to do is Janine, and I specifically remember this. As a kid, the PM singers used to rehearse in our basement. That happened for quite a while. And I was 7 or 8 years old, and that'd be me and my sister Sarah would be running around the basement doing who knows what we're doing.
I'll tell you.
Anyway, that was glory years for me, is being exposed to all that music at such an early age. That's what I'm truly grateful for in a lot of ways. For my father is his role model of excellence, and yeah. Anyway, so this is Janine. Enjoy.
Last time I saw Janine, she looked just like a royal queen. She cruised by with some wealthy guy in a Cadillac, and the scene was tight. Last time I saw Janine. Last time I saw Janine. We recall when we were 17. Those girls were so long ago, but you're short on that ball.
Go, Mattsons, go!
Unlike Paige wanted to be up here, I didn't want to be up here. So Mark asked me if I wanted to share a few words, and I'm not a funny guy. So, but there are a couple of things that I had to think about it for a while about my friend Phil. And I know we're all dating ourselves, and we see how long we've known Phil, but I've known him for over 40 years. And I met Phil. I was actually, I don't want to talk about me too much, but my background was classical. I was playing cello and singing vocal at a classical school in Colorado. Spending hours in the conference room, I said, this really sucks. 8 hours in practice rooms. And I was at the University of Northern Colorado and couldn't stand it. I ended up going to Iowa State and auditioning for what sounded like a really fun group called the Cardinal Keynotes. And it was just a blast. We did some great tunes, and then the director at that time said, "Oh, we've got a guy coming in to do a workshop, Phil Mattson." Okay, with Phil, I have no idea what that was, but I'll tell you, that was the moment that my life changed, is at that workshop with Phil, and I was hooked. And not only because of the music, but as Paige said, music was something for him to get at a relationship with you. That's what his medium was. That's what it was for me. Besides riding motorcycles, we were fanatical about that. I wasn't as bad as him, but yeah. Phil holds, I don't know does anybody know he holds a Guinness record? Yeah, okay, well I won't bring that up, but yeah, it's just, that's crazy. It's become kind of the standard in Harley riders to ride 30,000 miles in a month. But he was like the first one to do it, so he's in the Guinness book. It was for a short time, but that's pretty cool. And then he went on to continue riding. He did 125,000 miles that year. So, but there was a deeper meaning to that too. It's like I think it's anything on two wheels. I mean, if he wasn't on his motorcycle, he was always riding his bike. Even till a few years ago, before the accident, he was out riding his bicycle in a blizzard. He was crazy. But we had quite a good friendship over the years, but when it really took an interesting twist when he decided to move to Minneapolis. And I said, "Oh, great, that'll be fun. It'll be good to see you." And then I said, "Okay, well, do you need help moving in?" "No, I got a place down in Lower Town, and it's going to be great." And then a week later, I got a call, and he said, "Mark, I'd like you to audition for my group." I went, "Great." Or he said, "No, I want to start a new group, and I'd like you to audition." I said, "Great." He said, "Learn Body and Soul and be here tomorrow." Panic. And you're going to hear more about this from Jody up here. She's got a nightmare story about that too. So she'll take care of the humor about Phil and our time in Minneapolis. But Phil and I spent many, many hours together. Gosh, I just can't even go into all the stories, but we had so many conversations that would start off with music. And where does music align with the universe? And talks about God. And like everybody said, Phil was always searching for a purpose. But he really left, and that really transitioned his music, because I was so excited. It's like, I want to do all that really high energy stuff. And Phil got very philosophical in his writing in those last years, and we're all singing. He's got new reasons. He's just throwing at us right and left. It's like, Phil, come on, give me something upbeat. We're gonna put the audience to sleep. Beautiful stuff, but you can't do a whole gig with that kind of stuff. So we had plenty of heated discussions about entertaining versus, Phil always just said, let them come into our music, right? Let them be a part of it. So it didn't matter what Phil was doing with his voice or his hands during the concert. Let them come into it. That works, but I still think I need to entertain. So it was a constant battle over those few years. But it was still, the point I'm getting to is that Phil left a legacy, and it wasn't just his body of work. We are his legacy, because he used his music, as Phil said, that was just his medium. He loved each and every one of us, and he wanted to have such a deep relationship with us. And that's what we have to pass on, and we can do that through our music. So that's the only thing I really wanted to share about Phil. Yeah, so thank you.
I'm John Knudsen, and I was here in the mid-90s with Voices Iowa. I knew Phil about 2 weeks into the school year of rehearsals when he brought me in his office, and he said, John, for someone who plays piano so musically, you sure don't sing during music. Yeah. So now you're wondering why I'm standing up here, singing in front of you, so hold on to your shorts that way. But partly it's because I'm stubborn, and Phil did also teach me to be stubborn, because if anybody is stubborn, it's Phil. And I definitely learned from Phil really well because of his directness. I really appreciated that. It was a cause for conflict, but it was much better than the sort of Minnesota Lutheran avoidance that I was growing up with. So I really appreciated that. And the reason I want to sing this song, this is You Must Believe in Spring, which is what kind of introduced you to Phil even. Part of my Minnesota Lutheran thing is I feel like I could be shock absorbers for Phil sometimes. Not as much as Michele was, I don't think, in his life. But Phil had many highs and many lows. And he did really trust me. I was in hospitals with him for mental issues as well as physical issues. And I feel like Phil really did trust me to kind of be a little more stable force sometimes. I was the more conventional, and Phil was the one going, yeah. So anyways, it's ironic that this song needs shock absorbers. When the leafy chill. I'll do my best. And Michele, thanks for playing for me.
When lonely feelings chill the meadows of your mind, just think if winter comes, can spring be far beyond? Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows you must believe in spring. Just as the tree is sure its leaves will reappear, it knows its emptiness is just a time of year. The frozen mountain dreams of April's melting streams, how crystal clear it seems. You must believe in spring. You must believe in love and trust it's on its way. Just as the sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May, so in a world of snow, of things that come and go, where what we think we know, we can't be certain of. You must believe in spring.
name is Jeremy Fox, and I'm one of the full-time instructors here now of Lucas. This is my second year back and my 10th year of teaching here. And my office is Phil's old office. And I think about that a lot. Think about that more lately. Like many of you, he met me at the perfect time. I really don't think that I would be in music if I hadn't met him when I did. So, like many of you, I owe a lot to him. I said, Phil, I'm so glad you found me. And I remember him saying, Jeremy, you found me. And I don't know who found each other, but I do know that whatever force brought me to him, thank you, and Phil, here's to you.
No complaints and no regrets. I still believe in chasing dreams and placing bets. And I have learned that all you give is all you get. So you give it all you've got. Beyond the hill and do it all again. So here's to life and every joy it brings. Here's to life
Here's to life, here's to love, and here's to
Wow, sweet kids. Caprice is my new best friend. She's going to come home with me. Congratulations, Jeremy and Lucas, for creating and carrying on with this wonderful tradition. You're really amazing. That was a dirty trick just before I get up to talk, to have you be so of the heart. You know, just watching all of you wonderful SWIT kids singing some of the things we've done reminded me of stories. For instance, Janine, of course, he's done that before, believe it or not, with other groups. I sang with Phil in the Minneapolis iteration of the Phil Mattson Singers, and I can remember waiting for that introduction or the in-between stuff, and you're like, do I come in now? Is it now? And Phil would play this introduction, this beautifully complex introduction, and then the last two counts, he would play them a half step different than they were written, and we'd go, where's my note? You know, I can't find it now. And that was very, very maddening because Phil had that kind of sense of humor. And I never thought I would be in the company of so many who can sing the alto part to body and soul. There are a few of us out there. Thought I was the only one, but I guess not. Do we need a seventh inning stretch, by the way? You guys doing okay here? Mark alluded toward in the Minneapolis iteration that he got into being less of an entertainer and more just let the music come into you. And we had the fortune, miss, of singing How Shall I Fitly Meet Thee, which I don't know if you've ever heard. That was one of his things that he got very passionate about. The name of the song was How Shall I Fitly Meet Thee. I mean, what does that even mean? We never did figure that out. So I thought of so many things to talk about before I actually landed on something, but so many of them seemed just a little bit inappropriate. And little did I know, David, that you would break the ice with that piano teacher story. I might have just gone on. That was great, actually, yes. So it's probably right now, as I'm up here speaking, there's a gentleman on NPR on the Chris Thiele Live from Here show, and his name is Tom Papa, and he is from the program that he's created called Out in America. Have any of you ever heard of him? And he has a bit, and his bit is, have you ever, and then he tells a whole story, and then he goes, I have. So this is an audience participation. I need you to do that with me for any Mattsonism that seems to fit or something that you have experienced with Phil Mattson. Starting with, have you ever been in a high-performing stakes situation with Phil Mattson when from the piano during the quietest, softest part of the passage, he yells from the piano, quiet! I have. course we have. I first met Phil in May of 2012 when I had the nerve-wracking experience of auditioning for him. Just your typical audition. Have you ever had to sing and sight read notes, starting with a low C sharp up to a high B natural, then to an high E flat and down to the F sharp, and then over to an A double sharp? I have. That was followed by a solo. And then the crowning glory was singing the alto part for one of his arrangements as my knees were knocking and my teeth were clattering, and I gave it my all. Have you ever auditioned with someone who said to you, just after you attempted to sing the alto part of Body and Soul, I just don't understand why you can't do this? I have. First of all, really? You don't understand why I can't sing the alto part that you, Phil Mattson, wrote for Body and Soul? But I didn't say that. Instead, I left and spent the next 45 minutes in self-talk therapy, trying to rise above it all. I actually literally had a choir concert, a choral concert I was participating in shortly thereafter, and I had 15 minutes in between, and I stopped at one of the local beautiful lakes in Minneapolis and sat on a rock and said, "You're a good person, it's okay. You can still sing a few notes and you'll be all right."
I have.
That's the spirit, right? Along with that, I promised myself that if he called me back for a second audition, there was just no way I would ever put myself through that again. The time between that first audition and the next one was spent obnoxiously looping that very difficult alto part. I know a lot of you know which one I'm talking about. There's a couple, they're all hard in that song, but a couple measures that are nearly impossible. While driving my car, going on walks, standing in the line at the grocery store, I had a pitch pipe in my pocket. I'd blow that first note, sing the two measures, blow the pitch pipe again to see if by the grace of God I ended up on the right note, in an effort to make it so as unquestionable as just being able to say my name, because that's how he said the word perfect. I know Paige talked about perfection. He demanded that when you came back. When offered the alto position, saying no never even crossed my mind. A few weeks later, and just before we were going to start rehearsing, I called Phil because I had to set up a time to meet with him, because I had just received some pertinent information and I needed to discuss it with him. Hadn't even started rehearsals yet. This is a question for all the women who knew Phil. Have you ever had to meet face to face with someone of the opposite sex that you had just met a week earlier and explain to him that you had a stage 4 girly cancer with low odds of survival and most likely you'd be bald as a cue ball, just like him? I have. I knocked on his door, he invited me in, and I quickly spurted out my news. And that I would be starting chemotherapy soon, which would be followed by radiation, which would be followed by chemotherapy, which would be followed by surgery. I told him I didn't know how things would go as far as rehearsing and performing during that time, and that I would totally understand if he wanted to replace me. He took a few moments. Then he looked at me in the eye and he said, "Nope, I don't want to replace you. If we need to find a sub, I'll work on that." That's really who he was. Demanding? Yes. Impatient? Yes. Sweet? Could be. Very sweet. Have you ever practiced your Phil Mattson music so intensely that your mind had no room to think about or worry about anything else? And in order to get to sleep at night, you had to play your radio on some classical station just to cancel out his music? Woodshedding Phil's music was the best medicine. And rehearsals, as many of you know, were never boring. In fact, I've been known to credit my work with Phil as part of the successful outcome of that diagnosis. Have you ever been in a rehearsal with Phil, and as he was explaining to you what you did wrong, and what needed to be changed, and what you did wrong, and on and on and on, while the metronome was blasting through the microphone the whole time? Of course, that was his thing. Which brings to mind another question. Have you ever wondered if the person in charge of your rehearsal had something else in his mug other than the contents for which it was named? I have. next few years, we had weekly rehearsals and a few performances. After his accident, he gathered us at his transitional care facility, and we continued to work on his arrangements. As he made friends there, he wanted the opportunity to show us off. Have you ever received new music on a Thursday and at the following rehearsal, the next Thursday, you were told by the director that it wasn't a rehearsal but a performance? I have. So was life as a PM singer. He was one of a kind of vocal jazz savant who gave many of us opportunities we wouldn't have dreamed possible. Speaking of opportunities, that brings up my final question. Have you ever visited someone in the hospital who was surrounded by others, yet selected you to hand his false teeth to for brushing? I have. That's it. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Ellen Winters Reynolds, and I attended SWIC from 1993 to 1986, a very proud alum today, very proud alum. And I'm honored to be here among a legacy that is so rich and full, and I'm just happy to be a part of the fabric of his life and everyone else's life that I met. So, in fashion unlike my typical self, I'm just gonna let the music speak.
How do you keep the music playing? How do you make it last? How do you keep the song from fading too fast? How do you lose yourself to someone and never lose your way? How do you not run out of new things to say? And since we know we're always changing, how can it be the same? And tell me how year after year you're sure your heart will fall apart each time you hear his name. No way I feel for you. It's now or never. The more I love, the more that I'm afraid that in your eyes I may not see forever. If we could be the best of lovers, yet be the best of friends. If we can try with every day to make it better as it grows. With any luck, then I suppose the music never ends.
yet be the best of friends. If we can try with every day to make it better as it grows. With any luck, then I suppose the music never
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Weir.
Lucas, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Channeling Dad there. It was a choice between me and Luke Planker. We made the right choice. I'm just going to say a couple of words because we're running long, David Mattson. I love you, David.
Only had one shot.
Do you know where Mrs. Giesler is still? Is she with us?
She's in my heart.
Probably some other places too. All right. Enough about Mrs. Giesler. So I'm the second oldest child of Phil. And I know it's confusing for some of the local folks. They don't know exactly what's going on. I remember one time I was in town to help figure out some things going on with my dad's properties. And I met with a gentleman who had repaired his homes for years. And he said, so who are you? And I said, well, I'm one of Phil's sons. And he looked at me and said, I didn't know Phil had any kids. To speak to what my brother Josh said earlier. It was not his main focus in life, but I think of my relationship with my dad as a three-phase outline. My brother Michael and I are from his first marriage, which was fairly short, and it wasn't until much later in life that I actually found out the story. He just left, you know. He found a new situation that was preferable, and he was sort of a mysterious figure that would come in and out of our lives. He'd show up sometimes. He wasn't very present, but we knew who he was, and we knew that he was our father, and he would come, and sometimes we'd get together with the other kids for little gatherings, but it was mostly pretty low-key. And I credit two very important women in my life as the reason why I was able to eventually go on and have a good relationship with my dad. Because I could have been just like a typical kid of a divorce where you live your life and you're estranged from your father and you don't connect. But the two people, my mother, Joyce, made it her point and her mission to never say a bad word about my father. My father, who had left her with two small children, infant children, but she never said anything about that. She never badmouthed him in any way. And so in our eyes, it just hadn't worked out. So because of my mother's decision, there was no ill will. The second woman in my life is my wife, who in the summer of, I think, 1979 went to the Frank DeMiro vocal jazz. And my dad was teaching at that. Now, at this point, I knew my dad was a musician, but I didn't know much about what he was doing. And she came back from that camp, and she was really into Phil Mattson. I mean, not in an inappropriate way, but she was thrilled having had worked with him, and she just thought he was the greatest thing. So all of a sudden, my stock went up. I was the son of Phil Mattson. And this was very exciting because I was a little bit interested in her. So because of that, I was going to Mount Hood Community College, and I knew that Dad was coming to town to judge at a festival. And I met him at the school, and I brought him a cassette tape of the song that I had been working on, where I played all the instruments and had written it. And I gave it to him, and I just said, you know, take a listen to this. So a couple weeks later, I got a letter from him, and it said, I remember this line specifically. He said, "Dear Mark, I'm writing to you with tears in my eyes. I think this is so beautiful, and I want you to come and study with me at Foothill College." And that was really floored me at that time. So all of a sudden there was interest, mutual interest. I went to a summer workshop with Rita, my wife. She was not my wife at the time. And we had this great experience. And meanwhile, she was already planning to go to Los Angeles, so it seemed like a perfect time. So in a sense, my relationship with my dad really began in that year, 1980, at Foothill College. And it was an explosive year musically for me, where I was introduced to all kinds of things. I had been mostly an instrumentalist with a little bit of vocal, but mostly I was a trumpet player in middle school and high school, and I was pretty good. And I was very interested in all aspects of music, but I hadn't really gotten into vocal music. And coming to Foothill, it was the floodgates had opened. And I experienced my father as a teacher the way so many of you did, as this amazing talent and leader, but then with the bonus of, and he's also my dad. So I was hooked on that feeling, and that was sort of the infatuation year. Over the following years, we were able to develop our relationship little by little, and we started becoming more philosophical in our discussions. And eventually, we got pretty close, but to the point where once he had retired from SWIC, he started coming out to visit more often. And that was nice for me in a way, but as you know, my dad is a real presence. He doesn't come gently into the house. He comes with all of his Harley stuff and his pipes and just makes himself at home. And this caused some tension between my wife and I. The only time we've ever really had that kind of tension in our marriage. Because she didn't understand the dynamic. Her father was kind of a saint in a lot of ways. Kind of like the perfect father, did everything for her whole life. And she didn't understand, who is this guy coming in here thinking that he had these rights as a father? And I couldn't necessarily argue with her. All I could say is, well, he's my father, and he's the only one I have, so I kind of want to have a relationship with him. And she understood that. So, cut to phase 3 of our relationship, where what I call the caregiver phase. And that started in 2010, when he had been going through bouts of depression, which he had several in his life. This phase where I kind of had to kick into a caregiver role. At the beginning, it was challenging, but I figured it was going to be a short-term thing. But it lingered. And after his big motorcycle accident in 2015, his circumstances were such that without somebody being more hands-on, we knew it was not going to go well. In fact, we didn't think it was going to go well anyway, but we made the decision to move him out to California. So what ensued was about 2.5 years of me he was living at the Sunrise and about a block or two from our house. And our relationship changed dramatically because our roles were different. And he was different. He could no longer be that strong, mighty, powerful force anymore. He tried sometimes, but he couldn't really sell it as well. And that was okay. It took a toll, but it also gave me a different perspective on him. And as when we were all together, all of my brothers and sisters were all together, and were saying he did soften in his later years. He wasn't as much of a hard guy as he was before. and he was more tender, and I sometimes would ask myself, why am I doing all of this work? Why am I making all this effort for him when he wasn't really there for me when I was young? And I boiled it down in my mind to the fact that I've been continually trying to pay him back for the 1 year at Foothill, because it was so meaningful to me. And it had such an impact on my life. So, thank you, God, for that.
I had some other things I wanted to say, but I don't think now's the time. There's a saying attributed to Martin Luther, which is, "Why should the devil have all the good music?" Well, if the devil had all the good music, Phil Mattson stole it back. I'm going to say this briefly. Phil and I would have, when he would get in his philosophical discussions, and I recall something like this. He'd say, words, words. He thought they weren't able to convey what he was wanting to say or what he wanted to hear. And yet, and we would argue about that because I love words as well as the music. But if you think about the lyrics of the songs that he arranged and liked to have his groups perform, he cared about words too. Dancing in the Dark. Time hurries by. Time hurries by. Time hurries by. We're here and gone. Like a modern psalmist talking about the ephemeral quality of life. He loved one of the songs we just heard, "It's a Wonderful World." What a Wonderful World, by Louis Armstrong. You must believe in spring, about hope. And when he became acquainted with Something to Live For by Billy Strayhorn, he changed the lyrics from a yearning for romantic love to a yearning for something more than romantic love. I want to close by kind of doing a riff really on the call and response tradition. It comes out of African American music, so much a part of our music. And that is, I'm going to just say some lyrics. And they're words that I think maybe Phil would be saying. Maybe, maybe not, but it struck me that way. And then we have a response, which is the final song that Miche's going to lead us in. This will be my shining hour, calm and happy and bright. In my dreams, your faces will flower through the darkness of the night. Like the lights of home before me, or an angel watching o'er me. This will be my shining hour till I'm with you again.